Okay, so welcome everybody to this year's 2020 Walkabout Presentations. Just a couple of reminders before we get started. It might be a little bit easier. There's an option in the top right corner of your screen where you can click speaker view, and that will allow you to just see the person talking, which makes it a little bit less distracting so we can focus on their presentations. So that's a good option for you. I also ask that you just keep yourself muted so that there's no distractions or interruptions to our students who have worked really hard to prepare these presentations. And we'll go ahead and save all questions for the end. So once the student is done presenting, I will ask if there are any questions, and you can unmute yourself then to ask your questions, and the speakers will answer you. So we will go ahead and get started. Our first speaker tonight is Sarah Anderman, who did Walkabout in Travel and Agriculture.
Can you see my screen? Okay.
We can see it.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Anderman, and this is what I did for my walkabout. For those of you who don't know, I went to New Zealand. I was living in Christchurch, Swannanoa for about 2.5 months. I was learning about agriculture, farming, and a little bit of sustainable living. As you can tell, I left before Christmas, and that is because my family traveled down there with me to a vacation there. And basically, like 2 weeks in, it sounds kind of weird, but they basically just left me there to fend for myself. Now, this experience would not have been possible if it were not for family. My mother is actually from New Zealand, and all of her brothers are still from there, so it was very convenient, to say the least. Now, to get the journey started, here's me in the LAX airport in front of the big airplane about to travel to Sydney. But of course, with traveling, there comes a lot of roadblocks and whatnot. And being 18, I've kind of traveled a lot for my age. And for the first time in forever, the flight was actually canceled, and I had to spend a night in the hotel in Los Angeles. But luckily, it was kind of actually nice to sleep in a bed before a 13-hour flight. Now, I worked closely with my cousin, Olivia Hicks. Her sister is in the middle. It was so nice to actually see her and for 2 months, because being countries away from each other, you never get to have experiences with each other. So this whole experience was very nice. Now, where I was living for 2.5 months, I was living on my aunt and uncle's farm. It's about 10 acres of land, and to be honest, like, these two pictures do not do 10 acres justice, and it's a lot bigger than I ever expected. Now, on this farm, there's animals such as cows, chickens, and alpacas. I worked more closely with the chickens and alpacas because the cows technically were not ours. And so about like 2 weeks in, the owner of the cows moved them to a different paddock because, one, we were running out of grass, and two, because we were in drought. Now, a day in the life of a farm is quite very nonchalant and relaxing, I would say, kind of. I would wake up, feed the chickens, I would count how many eggs they laid, and I would mark them with a pencil, and I'd stack a box with oldest to newest, so you just use the older eggs first. And some other activities I did was painting, which was my favorite because I could just plug in my headphones and paint away, and I never really realized how relaxing painting was. But it also kind of helped that I was tanning while doing it, but also the fact that I realized everyone else in Ohio was in cold winter, so that helped a little bit too. Now, another thing, before dinner, we'd always pick some fresh vegetables such as cucumbers, tomatoes, green beans. And I don't think I've ever had fresh picked vegetables before, other than our basil plant that we actually just planted today. Now, I will warn you, in the next slide, there is a picture of me holding up a dead animal. So if you're squeamish of that, I would look away. Some other very cool things, I got to do was learn how to ride on a ride-on lawnmower, and which is very fun. It's basically a gigantic go-kart that's just louder, bigger, and it cuts grass. I got to build a bee hotel because we were currently putting in lemon and lime trees, and so we wanted a little landing place for the bees, so to help, also to help pollinate. Now, probably the coolest thing I actually got to do was, this is in the top right corner, is my uncle teaching me how to shoot an air rifle. And it was very eye-opening because back in the US, I see all this negative force around it, but in a farmer's standpoint, it's more to protect their crops and their animals. Now, with being in one of the most beautiful places on earth, I got to do some traveling around. So to explain some of these pictures, the first picture is of me in front of a very famous dormant volcano. It's called Rangitoto. This middle picture here is, instead of risking my life and jumping out of a plane like 14,000 feet in the air, I got to like skydive in a tube that was basically generated by a high-powered fan. In the bottom one, there's me in front of a geothermal hot pool. And let me tell you, this smelled disgusting. It's basically just sulfur coming up from the earth. And the best like description of the smell I can give you is old beef jerky. I was holding my breath for half of the time. Now, with all this traveling and with all these experiences, I did face some challenges, such as isolation. Going there, I did not realize how isolated you were from your neighbors. The closest neighbor is probably half a mile away, and you only go out once a week to go get groceries, to go get more feed for the animals. Another thing that I dealt with was homesickness, and to mentally push through the fact that you're not half a mile, you are half a world away from everyone you love and care about, and you can't just call up your friend and be like, hey, do you want to go for a car ride and go get some Taco Bell or something like that? And the biggest challenge that I faced was confidence. And throughout that experience, I didn't realize that I would be talking with adults almost the entire time and just getting through that barrier of not speaking with my friends every single day. Now, with challenges, there come learning experiences, such as independence. This is the first time I've traveled home by myself, and I will say that walking through the LAX airport half asleep is kind of terrifying. And I just remember having to talk to this one woman every single where I went. I was just like, where am I going? Where am I going? And farming knowledge. There's so much about farming that I had no idea about. Like, I know how to make a chicken throw up. I know how to use a weed whacker. I know how to put a halter on a alpaca that's twice my size that kicks you and spits at you. But the biggest thing that I learned was communication and being able to commute with my mentor of like what other projects I could do, and also communicating with my advisor, still trying to set up a second walkabout on a different time zone and also a world's away. Now, talking about my second walkabout, I was planning on interning at the Worthington Parks and Recreation Center. I was going to be working with a strength trainer and a head marketer. Obviously, COVID kind of shut that down, but one thing COVID did not shut down was my future. Next year, I will be attending Ohio University and majoring in outdoor recreation. Any questions?
Great job, Sarah.
Great job, Sarah. If anybody has any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. That's probably easier than me trying to keep track.
Sarah, it's Roseanne. I'm gonna jump in. First of all, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Just to hear you speak about everything is really so nice. And I'm wondering, do you kind of have the travel bug a little bit more? I know you've had the chance to travel, but what do you think then?
Oh yes, I always spent money on like materialistic things, and I think I told someone this a couple like weeks ago. I was like, I want to spend money on experiences and not like just materials.
Wow. You're my idol. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Good for you.
Sarah, can you move there?
I mean, sure.
No, I'm not. I'm not requesting like Sarah, move there. No, I'm asking if you were.
Are you talking about citizenship, Chris?
Yeah, or just yeah. How long? I assume you have a place to stay.
Oh yeah.
Do we
Hey,
have any,
Sarah.
do we have Kiwis on the call?
I think my mom is.
Sorry if that's offensive. I don't know. I'm so sorry.
Sarah, it's Jen. I have a question.
Um,
What was something that you noticed about the culture that stands out as maybe a difference from ours, from like the people you met or different behaviors? Was there something that maybe stood out?
Everyone hates Trump over there. Like everyone.
Hey, Sarah, I have a question. So I saw that you're going to Ohio University. I was just wondering, who's your roommate? Who's gonna be your roommate?
I think that would have to be you.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask.
Good choice, Maddie. Sarah.
All right. Any more questions for Sarah? All right. Great job, Sarah. That was really good.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Adrienne Hine, who spent her walkabout in retail and events.
All right, give me a second here. I always have trouble with this. Okay.
So Adrienne, we can see your screen, but we can't see you.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Okay,
There we go.
that's better. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Adrienne, and I'm a 3-year student at Linworth. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I did for my first walkabout. Okay, so for my first placement, I was looking for a place of work where I'd be able to work just a normal job, like work retail or something, because I had never held a normal job before. So I ended up landing a placement at a place called Wildcat Gift and Party, which is in Clintonville. So this is technically 2 buildings. One of them is the store where they actually sell gifts and party supplies, and the other is the clubhouse, which is where they host events and workshops. My daily schedule was 4 days per week, Tuesday through Friday, and I worked from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Something I had to get used to was working a little bit later than I was used to. Not working a little bit later, but staying out later, because the months that I worked, it would get dark earlier. But the tasks that they had me do there were mostly groundwork. There was actually very little event planning, which is what I expected, and they barely trained me for standard customer interaction. So some things I did were tagging inventory. They taught me how to use the price gun, which was pretty easy to use, although there were some slight malfunctions. Sometimes the ink would come out looking a little weird, or the tape would get caught inside the gun, but other than that, it was pretty easy to use. They also showed me how to use the die cut to make confetti. I spent a lot of my time doing this because the jars would have to be refilled very often, because we would use this confetti to make mixes and fill balloons, clear latex balloons for certain orders. I also made buttons. I got the hang of this pretty well, but we still ended up putting labels on the button maker just to make it less confusing. The button that's pictured here was used for a Valentine's Day event for OSU. I think that was on consent. We also made, well, my coworkers did this, but my coworkers made like conversation candy hearts with phrases like this as well, and hung them on the windows for people to see as they walk by the store. That was pretty cool. I also stocked inventory, and this gave me a taste of what I was capable of in a retail environment physically. And no, I did not just stock socks, but there was one day I spent like 6 hours that day just organizing our socks. So that was pretty fun. Other things I did were, as I said, I made confetti mixes. I helped set up and tear down for parties and workshops. Actually, I only did this twice. One was for a Valentine's Day event, and the other was for a Dolly Parton themed birthday party. Both were very fun to make decor for. And then I also stamped bags and jewelry boxes and folded t-shirts. There's this sign here that I made. I had to blow up like 75 of these gold letter balloons with a plastic straw. It was a very arduous task, but it was also very fun. I think it took like 2 days to finish. But this sign, if you can't read it, says, make your heart so big and sticky gorgeous that people gossip about it. I don't really know what it means. We didn't really know what it meant when we read the phrase and I had to make it, but we were like, all right, this is what they wanted. So some things I learned was especially more about my work ethic. I'm not very good at self-starting, and I'm hesitant to ask for help, but the tasks that I was given required me to, well, the tasks were delegated to me, so I didn't have to self-start anything, but in order to get the tasks finished correctly, I would have to ask for help and ask questions in abundance. I also had a renewed perspective on boring tasks, such as this one here. This is just a list of the store's vendors and their social media pages that I had to cross out to check if our social media page was following them back. So that was a pretty mundane task and very repetitive, but I was just happy to be of help. So a little bit about my second Walkabout plans. I plan to work at Class Acts, which is a talent agency in Columbus. I approached this a lot more confidently because this particular talent agency works with musicians, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about the inner workings of the music business, which is what they specialize in. And I would have interacted with other musicians being clients as well. But that was put to a stop due to quarantine. So lately during quarantine, I've been doing a lot of writing, whether that be songs, journals, just my thoughts, drawing and reading. So a lot of creating stuff. And although I love doing all of this, it's still very difficult to, try my hardest not to wake up at 11:15 every morning and stick to a self-imposed routine. But the good thing about all this is that I have a taste of what it's like to be responsible for my own schedule nonetheless. But there are definitely, as an artist, pros and cons to being alone with my thoughts. So I've been working on trying to be less critical of my art and my music as well, so as to actually finish it. And future plans, I plan to do 2 years at Columbus State to major in business and literature, and hopefully transferring to Groove U in Dublin, which is a music career program, to study music production. Any questions?
Adrian! Woo!
Woohoo! Oh, there we go. Great job, Adrian.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. What kind of like, did you go into your retail experience hoping, you said you were hoping to do more on like the event planning side of it? Is that something that you see yourself or maybe saw yourself wanting to do as a career before you had that experience, or was it just something you were interested in?
It was definitely just something I was interested in, and seeing as like my experience at Wildcat was mostly not really event planning at all, I kind of have no idea what that would look like. But
Yeah, that's
in
why
terms of, like,
I was
studying
curious.
communications, I would definitely study that in college probably. It's still something I'm interested in, so.
Cool. Great job. Any other questions?
Somebody asked, I think it was Tegan, she wrote something.
She says, what's been helpful at home to keep you motivated?
I actually, okay, so my living situation prior to like last week was my sister and her husband were living in my basement. And so I had to keep my musical gear in my room with everything else just like it was tight quarters. And so I never truly understood the importance of like having an actual space to work in. You know, like artists sort of have their own studios and writers have their own desks, but like I never truly understood the importance of it until I got to move my gear back down to the basement. And it's very quiet down there, and I have like very few distractions, whereas in my bedroom everything's there to like, again, keep me distracted, like my phone and a bunch of books and stuff. So definitely keeping my workspace free of distractions is very helpful.
It's a good life lesson. Any other questions for Adrian? Okay. Great job, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have another Adrian. We have Adrian Murray, who is going to be talking about his walkabout experience in archaeology and anthropology.
Am I good to start?
I think so.
Yep, looks good, Adrian.
Okay. Hi, my name is Adrian Murray. I've been at Linworth all 4 years of high school, and I'm gonna tell you about my walkabout. So for my walkabout, I was at
I'm
the
sorry, Adrian. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you went. Did you go back? No, you're back. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe it's just me. Start over. Go for it.
My name's Adrian Murray. Here's my walkabout. So for my walkabout, I was at the Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona, working at their School of Human Evolution and Social Change. Before this walkabout, I had generally low confidence, and I was actually a bit like anxious and scared of going on this walkabout because I had never traveled alone, and it was something out of my comfort zone with being around all new people and such. So my host family, while I was in Arizona, consisted of Dr. Ryan Stotts, and her husband, James Sharp, and their kid, Quinn. While I was there, they took me to see numerous things, such as Montezuma Castle, which was a cliff dwelling, Tusi Goot, which is another old Native American structure, and we also went to Pueblo Grande Museum and Archaeological Park, which is where this is from, and you can actually see like where they dug out one of the rooms. So a normal day consisted of Ryan and I dropping off Quinn, then going to campus, walking from the parking garage to the Shesk building, and then I would start and end the day in the lab pretty much every day I was there. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I observed an introductory anthropology course. Then we would leave campus and pick up Quinn on the way home. So in Buried Cities and Lost Tribes, which is the anthropology course, it was taught by Dr. Kostelena Michalaki. We addressed questions such as what is anthropology, which was the study of the origin, behavior, and the physical, social, and cultural development of people, and what is archaeology, which was the discovery of past remains and the analysis of their place in time and space. Some other things we covered included general archaeological methods for excavations and such. And we also talked about the early hominins, such as the Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo floresiensis, or the hobbits, which I found interesting. Then I also spent the bulk of my time in the Mesoamerican Archaeology Lab with Dr. Michael E. Smith, who I noticed was actually on this call, Dr. Angela Huster, who was the lab manager, an undergrad student named Molly Core, and 2 grad students named Rudy Ciceretti and Annie Sherfield. So Mesoamerican archaeology focuses on this general region, and what I was working on was located here in Teotihuacan, just a little north of Mexico City, and I was researching and performing data analysis on temples there. So the area of the city that I focused on most is right along here, which was the Street of the Dead, which is showed larger here in the inset. Here are 2 of the largest temples there, the Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon. I used the published maps and the accompanying database to compare information and check for major discrepancies and such. Some of my favorite parts of this walkabout were getting to meet Ruben, the mayor of the Fulton, who was there to make sure people observed the walk-only zones, and I had a conversation with him, learned that he's like a Vietnam veteran and all of that, which Ryan, who has been walking past him pretty much every day for a few years now, didn't know any of that. And on my birthday, while I was there, we actually had pizza delivered, and we had both of the big tables in the lab surrounded by people, and that was nice. Dr. Smith was working on a project with a group of other faculty members, and one of them, named Jose, he is a self-described recovering Marxist, and he was very interesting to listen to. And then on my last day in the lab, Rudy, Angela, and Ryan took me to the Chuck Box, which is a little burger place there that was very good. And then after this walkabout, I felt a little boost in confidence, and I had feelings of accomplishment and satisfaction having integrated myself into a new group of people, and like I proved to myself that I was capable of being away from home for so long and stuff like that. And then my future plans are to attend Otterbein University to pursue a degree in history. Any questions?
Awesome job, Adrian.
Great job, Adrian.
Adrian, I'm going to ask a quick one. It's Roseanne. First of all,
Okay.
history teacher's dream. I need all your notes. Did you feel comfortable in the academic setting? Did you feel like you had to do a lot of research outside of your time with others? How speak to that, your comfort level
I was quite comfortable there. Most of my work was just contained within like class and the lab, but there were a few times where I'd look over stuff outside of that, but overall it was pretty easy to manage.
Great. It's really good to hear. I heard really good things also. So congratulations.
I make a comment here. This is Mike Smith. This was my lab he was in. And I just want to say, after Adrian left, the whole school got abandoned. Everybody went home.
They miss you, Adrian.
I do want to say that Adrian did a good job, and basically we treated him as a college student and gave him something to do, and I like to give students things and have them figure them out, and he did a good job of figuring things out on his own, but asking a question when he needed to, and he managed to accomplish some useful things for us. So thank you, Adrian. It was a good experience for us.
Thanks.
Fantastic.
That's really cool. Chris Hasbrook, do you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, great job, Adrian. And I see that Ryan Stotts is also here. So hi, Ryan. So for at least 2 years, your mother has been both dreading and very excited about this. How was Walkabout for her?
I don't know.
Did she leave you alone when you were in Arizona?
We would text back and forth quite often, and there were some days where we would like video call, so I was able to like have my experience, but she was also rather informed on what was going on.
Adrian, I have a question for you. It's Kenzie.
Yeah.
Did you speak any Spanish when you were in Mexico?
I was
It's hard about your answer.
I was in Arizona, not Mexico. I was doing research on temples.
I see. I'm sorry. I missed that part. I misunderstood. I'm so sorry. Well, did you speak any Spanish in Arizona?
Not really. There were like a few things when I was trying to find stuff about temples that were in Spanish, but other than that, not really.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other questions for Adrian?
I have a quick question. I was just wondering how you got this opportunity. Did you have to like enroll at the college, or were you auditing? Like, how did it all work out?
So my mom knows Ryan Stotts from Linworth, actually, when they were in high school. And Ryan works at ASU and knew Dr. Smith, so it was just kind of those connections that ended up making it so I could do this.
That's really cool.
You know, it's very cool to see that a couple other of the classmates from that time right here also. So Ryan and to see Heidi, that's just great. I mean, people who went on Walkabout a long time ago, supporting the children of Linworth on Walkabout, just amazing. Very, very cool.
All right, any other questions for Adrian? All right, great job, Adrian. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Charles Osborne, who spent his walkabout in government.
All right, 1 second here. Let me just share my screen. And let's start back at the beginning, actually. Here we go. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So my name's Charles Osborne. I did my walkabout in government and pretty much self-discovery. So for my first walkabout, I started out in the Ohio House of Representatives. It was from January 9th until March 10th. So about my placement, pretty much while I was working there, I was working for the office of Representative David Leveland. I just wanted to show a few pictures of my walkabout and let you get an idea for the place I was working at. I was working downtown. I actually wasn't working in the State House. The view that you see on the top left picture over here is actually the view from the office building I had. So I worked in the Vern Rife Center. So pretty much it was right across from the State House, but it was definitely downtown, and you don't realize how big a city is until you were actually inside of it. Now, I say that was a huge thing because things like riding the bus, it was completely new to me. I've ridden the bus before, but it was mostly with friends or family or something like that. So if I wanted to get off at a certain stop, 95% of the time somebody would bump me or be like, hey, this is our stop, we need to get off here. So then after getting off the bus, me and a friend, Haley Dowdy, who is also on Walkabout at the time, were taking the bus together and actually rode down and would get breakfast every morning. Now, this normally doesn't sound like a big problem unless you realize that as a high schooler, breakfast for me is about as common as snow in a desert. So pretty much I would have to, it was kind of a new experience to me, just eating breakfast, riding the bus, just getting used to everything. And then especially with the big city, because you really don't realize how big a city is until you're inside of it. While I was in the area, I would have to figure out before I went on lunch where I'm going to lunch, because if I'm not figured out by then, 95% of the time, it would take me at least 30 to 40 minutes, because it would take about 10 minutes for planning, and then about the other 10, 15 minutes are walking and then walking back. The other thing I wanted to address was the professionalism of the office. The office was pretty professional. So, you know, it was pretty much what I'm wearing right now, which is just a tie, your normal dress shirt and everything like that. So it wasn't too foreign to me. The thing that was foreign to me was more the idea of how professional we were speaking wise. So outside the office, we would talk kind of more formally. We would be very dedicated to what we are saying, and everything we are saying is very reassuring and like pretty much what has been written down. But when it came out to things like we were talking in the office or something like that, you know, it was much more relaxed atmosphere, which I wasn't used to because I was expecting more of a very stiff and rigid environment where I wouldn't fit in as well. Now, I did also have to learn some new skills. Now, if you see the desk over here, you can see how small it is, and you can see how big the envelopes are, which doesn't seem like a problem until you take about 2 or 3 of things that are about the same size, spread them across the desk, and then add on also the empty envelopes. So I had to quickly learn how to be organized, or else my desk would be completely disorganized, and honestly, by the end of the day, I would feel completely burned out because I'm trying to reach across about 5 different things just to grab something and stuff it in and put it down. Another thing I had to go with was also confidence. And this is also something that I wanted to address because I had to do things such as emails to people I wasn't exactly familiar with. I had to check in on things and be confident in my answer as well as my questions, because if I wasn't confident in my answer, something bad could happen. Something could get mailed out to someone that was mistakenly mailed out and not necessarily supposed to be. So, especially with my questions, I had to learn my own limits. If I didn't know something, at first, one of my biggest regrets is that I did not ask questions as nearly as much as I probably should have. When I started out here, I was very timid. I was very shy. I didn't want to talk to anybody because I was just trying to get through the day. So as I went along, I got a little bit more confident, and I was able to learn my limits, such as when I needed to eat and when I needed to take a break, so that way I wasn't completely dead by the end of the day. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually the March 10th to now. So March 10th is when Ohio revealed that we had our first 3 coronavirus cases. So we were quarantined pretty much from then until now. All right, so I really want to start out with what actually happened to my walkabout. So my first choice was actually to go work as a campaign volunteer. There wasn't many campaign opportunities here, but I wanted to get into the campaign. So I decided I was going to look out for the Bloomberg campaign. And I was going to intern there. I was pretty much going to answer phone calls, place yard signs, pretty much you're just average volunteer work. That was until March 10th in the afternoon. I got a text from I got a call from my mentor who said, sorry, but our campaign has completely dried up. I wasn't even notified until probably today when my email was just shut off for no reason, which was fine because I had a backup just in case it didn't work out at the State House. Well, about 7 hours later, I get a text from my mentor at the State House. He says, I'm sorry, Charles, out of an abundance of caution, the Ohio House is pending volunteer intern work for all offices. So pretty much my both walkabouts fell through in less than 8 hours. So what happened after my walkabouts fell through? Well, I had to kind of make my own little thing. So first off, my theater started closing down, which is where I work. And so pretty much I lost all rigidity in my schedule. It just became completely open all day, nothing to do. And then along came a little app. Well, along came a lot of online learning where I decided to take on American Contract Law and the Russian alphabet for no particular reason other than just to keep a little bit of rigidity in my schedule. And this came also with a daily schedule that my parents and I worked out, which ended in the well because I'm very grateful for the fact that I am able to get up in the morning and have a set schedule to something to do. And while we were working on the schedule and I was doing my classes online, I was also working for classes next semester in person. So I was actually working on things for FAFSA because unfortunately my family was not one of the lucky few who was not affected by the coronavirus in a financial standpoint anyway. So while all this is happening and everybody's kind of panicking and freaking out, I decided to stop and just take a look around a little bit. I noticed that nature was growing and that everything was kind of going on its own. It didn't need the permission of school to tell it that it could grow, that it could do with this, that, and the other. I decided to reflect on myself, much like how nature grows on itself despite this whole pandemic thing happening. Didn't skip a beat. So I wanted to talk about how I was a little bit more relaxed and more confident as I get into these sort of things. And I found myself being a little bit more independent in daily conversations, just being able to talk to someone confidently without freaking out and trying to get out of the conversation quickly. I also found myself being a little bit more organized and creative, and not to mention self-aware. Because I was self-aware, I was able to gain these little nuances of skills, and I feel so much better about myself coming out of these two walkabout experiences. So as for the end of my presentation, I just want to ask, does anybody have any questions?
Great job, Charles.
Great job, Charles.
Fantastic job, Charles. Way to go, dude.
Thank you.
So well spoken. So nice.
Oh.
Charles, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you find, well, first off, you did an amazing job, and this should be part of your walkabout, is how you got through this presentation. I mean, what an incredible experience that was. So very impressive. But had you been for a long time wanting to be in government? Is that a goal of yours? Is that a drive?
Yes. So actually, my interest in government actually kind of stemmed off of my interest in history. And I initially had this like huge interest in history in 8th grade. And once I came into my freshman year, I really came into this huge interest in politics and why everybody is thinking certain ways, and what we can do to change certain things, as well as how to do such things. So I wanted to look into the idea of being of working in a government office. So that was why I chose my first walkabout. So in short, yes.
Yes, excellent. Just you did such a great job, and it sounds like you had really some good experiences. And I'm so impressed with your own self-awareness of looking around in the midst of this and seeing that that nature, Earth, the world is still going on as much as we're all having this other experience. And I think that brings a lot of wisdom to your walkabout. So congratulations, what a great job.
Thank you.
Chris, go ahead.
So you talked about Haley. I'd love to hear you talk more about that relationship. I don't know if you heard, but in her presentation, she told us that she didn't even know you were a senior until this year. She said for the last 3 years, she had never had a class with you, and so she just assumed that you were a year older. And then you showed up again this year, and she said, well, I guess that guy's the senior. She spoke very warmly of the relationship and said that she really enjoyed those opportunities, those meals. It was really nice. I was just wondering if you could tell us more about that.
Okay, yeah. It was actually pretty cool. The first thing so actually it started before Walkabout, just a tiny little bit. We were just working together, and she happened to tell me that she was going downtown as well. So I was like, all right, why don't we carpool? Unfortunately, the carpool thing didn't work out. So we were like, all right, so let's just take the bus together. So we ended up taking the bus together and just talking about, just shooting the breeze, really. I mean, we just talk about anything from how we felt about certain people, about what's going on at work, and what's going on in the world even. I mean, just random things that would come to mind. And we ended up just forming this really cool bond. And actually ended up, for the last few weeks, we actually ended up going to like this little diner downtown. I don't know if you saw it in the presentation, but yeah, we would, every morning we would go and sit down. We'd sit down and talk about how our walkabouts are going, or just the crazy things that like our mentors are doing right now. And it was just a really cool time to enjoy with her.
That's great. That's really great.
It looks like Amy Bowman has a question. Amy?
Yeah, so I have preconceived ideas about what a government office would look and feel like, but I don't know what the reality is. Were you surprised by anything, or did you have an image in your head that was proven wrong, or anything that surprised you about the environment or the work or the people?
Yeah, actually, okay. So I went in there kind of expecting it to be a little bit more of a hectic environment, a serious environment, but like very hectic, kind of people running around, you know, that are not necessarily running around, but, you know, kind of hurrying places and trying to get everywhere. But in fact, actually, it was kind of more of a relaxed environment. And honestly, the only thing that was very extremely serious was the building layout. And I say that because the building was definitely built with an intent of being a government office. So it was very boring. Everything looked the same. In fact, some of the interns and I would actually get confused on which side of the building we'd be on at times. So yeah, there was that sort of thing going on with the building. But in general, the people there were pretty nice people. They were super, super warm. And like a super nice people. Like, I mean, if you didn't know where something was, you could honestly ask anybody on the entire floor and they'd be like, oh, it's over there. Don't worry about it. Like we all need help with this office and stuff like that. It was just the best work environment I've honestly been in before. And honestly, I hope that I can go back to that.
That's awesome. Charles, I just think everyone needs to hear how prepared and serious you took this presentation. We're so proud of you. You should be really proud. And I think being able to present under these circumstances speaks to the kind of politician you might be one day. You can handle whatever is thrown at you on the streets, in the office.
Great job, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good job, Charles. All right, for our last presentation this evening, we have Maddie Ross Witherup, who's going to be talking about her time spent in volunteerism and travel. Maddie, you doing okay?
Do you guys, Maddie? It looks like maybe she dropped.
Oh, I'm gonna give her a call. I think if the meeting's locked, that might be an issue, but I think her mom is still in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna unlock
it.
Okay.
Thank you, Kenzie. And Amy,
While we're working on this, can I make an announcement? Do you want me to wait?
No,
go for it.
Hey, seniors, so we got a confirmation today, and we wanted to let you know that so part of our graduation is that we, at our senior rec, we have a ribbon, and it goes around the entire room, and everyone gets a piece of it. And then the staff goes around and cuts off a piece of ribbon, kind of symbolically releasing you from the program. Now, we still plan on having a physical graduation in July. That's something that we've been talking about. But symbolically, tomorrow night, several of us staff members will be at Linworth at 8 o'clock, so that when the Zoom meeting happens, we're going to weave that ribbon through the graduation signs that are out front, and a few staff members will be there. It might even be raining, but we don't care. We're going to be there. We're going to be there to cut you out through the program. Very exciting, big symbolic thing. So pass the word, spread the word. I invite you all to come back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. That's probably about when we'll be ending that session, and as soon as that last session happens, that's when we'll do it. So we'll move straight from the last Walkabout Symposium presentation right into the Linworth Ribbon Ceremony. Hi, Maddie.
Hi, Maddie.
Maddie, you're on mute, love.
Sorry.
There we go.
I'm just pulling up the Google slides and then I'm ready.
Great.
Chris, did you see Wes's question in the chat?
Okay, I'm ready, but does Chris have to answer a question?
No, it's all
Okay.
you. Okay, let me reintroduce you.
Okay.
Okay, so up next is Maddie Ross Witherup, who is going to tell us about her walkabout spent in volunteerism and travel.
Okay, can you guys still see me? Lucy, go away. Sorry.
I see, Maddie, did you share your screen?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was shared.
I'm not seeing it on my computer.
No, I'm not seeing it either.
Okay.
I
Let
have
me.
yours close if we need to go that route.
Hey, Mom, can you help me really quick? I don't think it's working.
Hey, Maddie, Jen and I have access to your presentation if you want one of us to screen share.
Okay, it says this computer won't screen share. I think that's the problem.
Okay.
So,
Is yours frozen totally?
no, it's just the screen.
Maddie, let me pull it up, and then you can tell me. You just say next slide, please. And
Okay.
did you make any changes since?
I added something like 2 days ago, at the very end.
It would have added to this.
Yeah, it'll
one, right?
update.
This is yours.
All right, Maddie.
It's okay.
You got
Sorry.
it. No, you are all good. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well.
Oh, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Now mine's not loading. I had the same problem the other night too. Woo, you guys. This is one we'll remember. Okay.
Well, hi, I'm Maddie, and I can't wait to tell you guys about my walkabout experience. Next slide.
I'm sorry, Maddie.
No, you're fine.
I need to move my bar and it's not moving. There we go.
So for my first walkabout, I traveled to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, focusing on volunteer work through International Volunteer Headquarters. Next slide. The reason I chose this walkabout is because I love to travel, and I also wanted to find a way to give back to a community at the same time. I specifically chose Vietnam because I really wanted to be in and learn about the culture of the place of where I was adopted from. And I chose teaching English to kids because I love working with kids and being around kids, so it just seemed like the perfect fit for me. Next slide. Definitely the scariest part of this trip for both me and my family was the travel aspect. I had never traveled alone, let alone out of the country by myself. But obviously all is well, and after I landed, I got into the car and headed to Walkabout District in Ho Chi Minh City. Next slide. Which became my new home. Sorry. Which became my new home for the next 6 weeks. I lived in an active college dorm. There were college students on floors 2, 3, and 5, and volunteers stayed on floor 4, with our dining hall on floor 1. That upper right picture is the picture of our hallway. There were dorms on both sides and 6 people per room, so 3 bunk beds. That center picture is my view from my top bunk where I stayed the entire time. And every volunteer gets one of those brown lockers across the room to put some of your stuff, but for the most part, we lived out of our suitcases. And then there was 1 bathroom for the whole room to share. As you can see, there's not a lot in the room, so it was a pretty minimalistic way of living, as well as there wasn't a lot to do in the district. There was a supermarket, school, and a couple of coffee shops, and that's really it. Next slide. Regardless of that, what made my trip so special and so meaningful were all the people and all the friends that I made while I was there. I had no idea what to expect going into this trip. I assumed I would be the youngest, and I was right. I was the youngest by a lot, but I had no idea that I was going to meet people from all over the world and make friends that I still have today. I can confidently say I have friends in Australia, Belgium, Netherlands, France, England, you name it, and I probably met a volunteer from there. Obviously, sharing a room with 5 other girls, you get really, really close. So that top right picture is a picture of me and my first set of roommates. So there are lots of late night talks and card games and playing Just Dance on someone's computer. So it was really fun. Next slide. My everyday schedule consisted of walking to the school down the street, which was 1.5 miles away, so not too bad of a walk. We would walk there and teach 5 and 3-year-olds, and then walk back to the dorms and eat lunch, walk back to the school, teach 4 and 2-year-olds, and then dinner at the dorms. After dinner, it was free time for all the volunteers to sightsee or explore, but for the most part on weekdays, we were so exhausted, we just hung out in the dorms or fell right asleep. Next slide. These are some pictures of some of the kids that I worked with. They were so cute and so adorable. I miss them so much. My mentor is that top center picture, Tina. The entire trip, everyone just kept talking about how much we looked alike and how much we acted alike, which I took as such a big compliment. She is such an inspiration and the best mentor I could have asked for. Next slide. So near the end of January is Tet, also known as Vietnamese New Year, and is treated exactly like how we treat our New Year and Christmas break. Schools were closed for a week and a half and a lot of businesses closed. It was a time for family and celebration, so volunteers also got a week and a half off of work. Luckily for me, one of my best friends, Greg, who is also a Linworth alumni and also on this call, was in the middle of his gap year traveling Asia with his dad. They just happened to plan to stay in the same city at the same time I had off of work, which was such a coincidence, but the best coincidence that could have happened. Still to this day, we can't believe that we got to just casually walk around and enjoy Vietnam together. We stayed in District 1, which was the more touristy area, so lots to do compared to my district. It felt like a different world, even though they were only 20 minutes away. Unfortunately, during this time is when the coronavirus was a really pressing issue in China and starting to be in Vietnam. There were 3 cases in Vietnam, so all schools shut down as a precaution, leaving me having to figure out what to do with the rest of my walkabout. Next slide. So still part of the same volunteer program, I joined the cooking project. Every day we would get up really early to cook in the dorms, and we would pack it up, go on a bus, and then serve to hospital patients and their families, homeless, and people in orphanages, and then obviously dinner at the dorms. Next slide. Every day we would cook for 300 to 400 people, so we'd have to get up at 5:30 in the morning and cook till 11, pack it all up, and walk it down 2 miles to the bus station, so multiple trips, and was definitely the most physically demanding thing I've ever had to do. But it was a really great experience and a really great way to end my trip. Next slide. Some of the obvious challenges was just homesickness. I really missed my family and my friends and my pets and warm showers and comfy beds, not on top of a metal bunk bed. Besides just normal travel anxieties too, I was expecting my trip home to be really stress-free and easy, but with the virus on our minds and not knowing all the precautions we know to take now, it was really scary. So luckily it all turned out okay. And then disappointment. I was really sad that I didn't get to go back to the school after the holiday break, and I didn't get to say goodbye to the kids or really finish what I went there to do. But the cooking project turned out to be one of the best experiences that I just had to jump over that disappointment hurdle. Some really great takeaways from it is independence. I never thought in a million years I'd be able to get on a plane and fly somewhere all by myself. But walking away from this, I have so much more confidence that I could fly anywhere I want and be able to take care of myself, which is a really great feeling to have. I touched on the friendships and how much I cherish them, and I can't wait to see them all again. And then personal skills, obviously, but cooking skills were the biggest standout to me. I didn't go in knowing very many cooking skills, but now I can make my way around a Vietnamese kitchen. Not so sure about an American kitchen, but I'll work on that. And then all this put together just amounted to a lot of personal growth that I was really happy to see. Next slide. For my second walkabout for a few weeks, I worked at Columbus Montessori Education Center, focusing on alternative education and teaching assistance. Next slide. Part of what makes this education alternative is it is a multi-grade classroom. So I had first through third grade all in one room. So a little bit of an older age group than in Vietnam. And kids were given work plans instead of a teacher teaching lessons all day. So kids had to prioritize what they needed to work on to get it done by Friday. So a lot of my job was just reminding kids to stay on task and helping them, which led to a lot of one-on-ones in the hallway and giving them a quiet space to work when the classroom got a little chaotic. And then every classroom had 2 teachers, so if one was sick or absent, I would substitute, which was really scary, jumping into a new classroom with new students, a new adult, and just having to go straight into teaching. But by the end, it wasn't as much of a daunting task, seeing as it happened quite often. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to work in the children's house or daycare with students in special education, but that's what was my plan for the rest of the walkabout. Next slide. So my mentor on the left, Amanda Weiss, or Miss Amanda is what I call her. She was my teacher for first and second grade when I went to this school, and she was so great. I learned so much from her, and it was so great to kind of come full circle since I was graduating high school. Next slide. Because I did go to this school, a big challenge for me was just familiarity. I didn't feel pushed as much since I had done an interim there. I used to go to the school. I knew exactly how things worked. It wasn't as drastic of a change as Vietnam was. Kind of contrasting that, there was constant change. Every day I would walk in and have no idea what classroom I'd be in, what teacher, which was really hard, but something that I grew very accustomed to by the end. And then just being socially isolated. I had just come back from Vietnam. I left early in the day to go to work, go straight to dance, and then sometimes not get home from dance until 11 o'clock at night. And then again, just disappointment, like every senior, walkabout being cut short, and this was now my second school closing because of the virus, which was tough, but the way it is. Obviously, the takeaways just outweigh all of those, and I got a lot of experience working with adults, with more kids, and just in a professional workspace, which gave me a lot of confidence and something I'm excited to help me through the rest of my life. Next slide. And that leads us up to where we all are now, quarantine. I struggle with the same things as everyone else with messed up sleep schedules and boredom, but I've gotten to work out, spend lots of time with my family and pets, and my sister is home from college, which is really, really awesome. Next slide. And then hopefully in the fall, my future plans are to go to Ohio University studying social justice, law, and culture, and getting to room with my best friend in the world, Sarah. And thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Linworth, for the opportunity.
Yay, Maddie!
Great job, Maddie.
Thank you.
Good job, Maddie.
Stop, Maddie.
Amy, do you have a question?
I do. So I just realized as you were speaking about gaining that independence and confidence and, you know, traveling the world independently, Dylan said the same thing in his. And then I remembered you guys both were basically traveling, not at the exact same time, but did you guys rely on each other at any point? Were you texting like about that as you were both kind of going through that experience?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, especially because Dylan had never traveled outside the country, so he was texting me questions like, what is customs? Like, how do I find international travel versus domestic? And luckily, our time zones were a lot more similar than it was back here, so we got a chance to have a little bit bigger of a talking window than people back home.
They wrote theirs in the chat.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Since you were in Vietnam before, as things were happening in China, and before the coronavirus got to us, did you have any experience using masks, or how did that all work when you were there?
Yeah, so especially because we were cooking and serving to hospital patients and interacting with a lot of people in the community, we were required to wear masks everywhere we went and gloves everywhere we went. So I learned a lot about, cross-contamination and just having to ignore that you have a mask on. So definitely now we're required to wear masks a lot. It's not as much of an uncomfortable or new thing for me.
Excellent, thank you.
Maddie, it looks like Tegan might have had a question in the chat. She said, how do you think your outlook on this experience would be different if it would have gone the way it was supposed to, aka coronavirus never happened?
That's a really good question. I think I would have I don't know if it'd be better or worse. It would just be a really different experience. I would have gotten a lot more experience with the kids, which would have been awesome and definitely what I had envisioned. But I am really thankful and think everything does happen for a reason. I met a lot of new people in the cooking project and learned new skills. And I had to find different ways to connect with people in the community, which I think pushed me in a good way.
Hey, Maddie, this is Matt Greason.
Hi.
Hey, I've got a question. When you switched to the cooking project, was that a choice? Did they give you choices? How did they communicate with you about the change that was happening? What decisions did you have to make? How'd you navigate that?
Yeah, so within my volunteer program, there were 5 different projects, including teaching, medical, cooking, and a few others. And the cooking project really had the least amount of volunteers, and that's where they needed the most help. So even though that wasn't my first choice or something that really interested me, that's where they needed help. So that's where I went and chose to go.
Bayla, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I was wondering how you learned about the program that you did while you were in Vietnam.
Yeah, so I was kind of struggling planning my walkabout. I had really no idea what I wanted to do. And my mom is actually a volunteer that comes to Camp Christian every year. And her and Jen just got into a conversation, and I guess Jen knew about it, and it took off from there.
Okay, any other questions for Maddie? Okay. Well, I think that concludes our presentations for the evening. Everyone did such a good job. I'm really proud of all of you guys. I know, we as a staff talk about that all the time, but you guys have done a really good job. We're impressed by you. We're proud of you. We're excited for you guys. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yes.
And thank you guys for being here and listening to their presentations. Amy, is there anything else I need to do before we wrap up?
No, thank you, Kenzie. Thank you for hosting. You, the students, you guys are amazing. We're so proud of you guys and to have you guys represent Linworth and the Walkabout program. This was probably one of the largest groups we had for a set of presentations. So thank you to the people who are supporting our students and who, allowed them to have these experiences and supported them. And thank you for your patience through these technical difficulties and your understanding. We're grateful for grace and support as we figure this out. But yeah, it's an honor to work with these people, these students. So thank you guys.
When we decided that we wanted to do something and had to go this route, we didn't know what it was going to look like, but it has exceeded our expectations. The kids have delivered time in and time out. And in the end, all of the little glitches and whatnot, that those mean nothing. It was really about your experiences and hearing your stories, and you guys brought it, and we're so proud and we're so thankful that you were able to do that.
Great job, everyone. Great job. Seniors, I hope you jump back on tomorrow night at 8. Join us for the ribbon ceremony. We're really proud of you guys.
Yeah, Chris, are we going to use the same link for that?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Good job, everyone.